James works it out. James is a bright red engine. He always likes to look his best, to do his best, and to show other engines he knows best too. It was winter on the island of Sodor. Thomas, Stanley and James were working at the yards. They were shunting trains to take to Great Waterton. They had to arrive on time. Stanley watched James shunting his trucks. They wiggled and giggled. James quickly biffed and bashed his trucks into line. "You're the best biffer I've ever seen." "Hey, that was nothing. See how easily I can shunt heavy Hector?" James collected Hector. Stanley watched as James shunted Hector to the back of his train. Snow started to fall. "I'm ready to leave. I'll see you both at Great Waterton." "It's starting to snow, James. You should check the weather with the yard manager." James didn't want to be told what to do by a truck, especially in front of Thomas and Stanley. "I'll decide what we do. The weather doesn't bother me." So James buffered up to his train and steamed slowly out of the yards. James puffed through the countryside. The snow was getting heavier. James stopped at a signal. Harold swooshed in. "There's bad weather all over the island. It's very hard to see the tracks." "Then we better go through Henry's tunnel." James sniffed. He didn't want to be told what to do by a truck, especially in front of Harold. "I'll decide what we do. We'll take the track through Shen Valley. It's the quickest way." The signal changed and James puffed away, pushing his train. James arrived at the Shen Valley Junction. Now the snow was very thick. It made it hard for James to see ahead. James puffed on to the wrong track. James thought he was steaming through Shen Valley, but he wasn't. He was steaming towards the snowy hills. James saw Edward in a siding. He was wearing his snowplow. "The ice has made the line ahead very slippery. It will be hard to shunt your train up the hill." James was surprised he was in the hills. "I must have taken the wrong track," he thought. "I've had to clear snow from lots of lines." James was worried. "We need Edward's help. He could couple up to the front of the train." But James didn't want to be told what to do by a truck, especially in front of Edward. "I'll decide what we do. I can manage on my own." So James puffed slowly towards the hill. James huffed and puffed. He steamed and strained. His face was now as red as his boiler. James arrived at the top of the hill. He was very pleased. "Now I can puff fast down the other side," he thought. Then there was trouble. Hector could see a snowslide had blocked the line. Hector knew that if James slowed down at the bottom, they would get stuck in the drift. "Onwards, onwards, don't slow down!" But James didn't want to be told what to do, especially by a truck. "I'll decide what we do," he huffed to himself. So James applied his brakes. The train smashed straight into the snow, and it stuck. James couldn't make his delivery. He felt very bad.
James is silly, James is slow, James has got us stuck in snow.
James wished he had checked with the yard manager about the weather. He wished he hadn't tried to find his way through Shen Valley, and he wished he had asked Edward to be his front engine. Now I know Hector was trying to help me. The trucks giggled. Quiet! Please, Hector, how can I deliver my train on time? Hector was happy to help. I'm a very heavy truck. We must race down the hill at full speed, then we will biff the train right through the snow. What a good idea! So Hector was uncoupled from the train. James wished and wheezed. At last, he had hauled Hector back to the top of the hill. Go, James, go! Hector and James raced faster and faster down the hill. There was a mighty biff, and Hector pushed the train right through the snow. We did it! Well done, Hector! Hector was pleased. Thomas and Stanley were already at Great Waterton. James, Hector and the train arrived. You made it. We were worried. I wasn't worried. Hector helped me all the way. Thomas and Stanley looked surprised. You can always rely on a good truck. Hector was happy to be a good truck, and James was happy to have a new friend. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Push me, pull you. One bright spring morning at the coal yard, the yard manager was talking to Scar Lowy. A puppet show is coming. The children will be excited. No one in the hills has ever seen a puppet show. Scar Lowy wanted to pull the puppet show special, so he raced away. Scar Lowy puffed into the transfer yards. Thomas and the thin controller were already there. Please, sir, may I pull the puppet show special? That's a fine idea, Scar Lowy. Scar Lowy's boiler bubbled with excitement. Watch out, they're heavy. Scar Lowy buffered up. Slowly, Scar Lowy puffed away. The trucks were heavy. But Scar Lowy was happy. The puppet show special was his. Scar Lowy heaved and hauled up the steep hill. At last, he reached the top. Rheneas was there. He was very excited to see the puppet show special. Those trucks look heavy. I could help you. But Scar Lowy didn't want to share his special with Rheneas. No, thank you. I can pull these trucks on my own. I'm stronger than you. No, you're not. Oh, yes, I am. Then an idea flew into Scar Lowy's funnel. We'll put the trucks between us and pull our hardest. The strongest engine will pull the puppet show special. Rheneas was soon coupled up to the back of the train. They pulled with all their strength and steam. First, the trucks trundled one way, then they trundled the other. Skarloey was determined to win. Then Rheneas heard a creaking and a cranking. He knew the couplings were being pulled too hard, but Skarloey wouldn't give up. I must win, he thought. Then there was trouble. With a crack and a clank, Rheneas's couplings snapped. The puppet show trucks bashed and bumped into Skarloey and pushed him down the other side of the hill. Skarloey was scared. He tried to apply his brakes, but they wouldn't work. Skarloey flew faster and faster down the steep hill. Skarloey saw Duncan. He was pushing trucks of bunting onto the main track. "Look out, Duncan! Stop!" But it was too late. Skarloey crashed into Duncan's trucks. Bunting flew into the air. It fell all over Skarloey. Duncan was cross. "Oh, sorry, Duncan, but I must get the puppet show to the children." Skarloey raced on. The puppet show special clattered and chattered. Then Skarloey saw Rusty at a junction ahead. Rusty was pulling trucks of special ice cream. "Out of my way! I can't stop!" Rusty stopped right across the tracks. Skarloey bashed into Rusty's trucks. Ice cream flew into the air and splattered all over the engines. Rusty was cross. Now there would be no ice cream at the puppet show. "Sorry, Rusty, but I must get the puppet show to the children." So Skarloey clattered on. Skarloey was puffing towards Percival Pond. Then there was trouble. Skarloey went round the bend too fast. He steamed into a siding. Skarloey bashed through the buffers. With a splash, a sploosh and a splosh, Skarloey plunged into Percival Pond. Fizzling fireboxes. I wanted to pull the puppet show special on my own. Now look what I've done. The children won't have ice cream or flags, and they won't have their puppet show. Help! But there was no one there to hear. Then Skarloey heard a whistle he knew. That's Rheneas, he thought. Rheneas puffed to the edge of the pond. Skarloey had never been happier to see his friend. "I puffed as quickly as I could. I thought you might need my help." I do. I wanted to show you that I was the strongest, but all I have shown you is that I am the silliest." But Rheneas was happy to help. Slowly Rheneas heaved and hauled his friend out of the pond. At last, Skarloey was back on the rails, but his firebox was out, and his coal was wet. "Rheneas, you must take the puppet show to the children. I have other jobs to do." "Thank you, Skarloey." And Rheneas puffed proudly away with the puppet show special. Skarloey had a lot to do. He delivered new trucks of ice cream to Rusty. Then Skarloey found Duncan. Duncan's trucks were now filled with the bunting. "I'm going to be late for the puppet show." "Don't worry, Duncan. I'll help you. We'll steam to the showground in no time." Duncan and Skarloey arrived just in time. The children were gathered round the puppet show. "Welcome everyone to the first puppet show in the hills." The children cheered. Skarloey puffed up to Rheneas. "You're my best friend, Rheneas, and there's nothing stronger than friendship." Heave Ho Thomas. Thomas is a busy and cheery engine as he puffs and huffs across the island. He always toots hello to other engines and to children along the way, even when Thomas is pulling heavy loads. One morning, Thomas puffed into Brendam Docks. The fat controller was waiting. You are all here to welcome the new engine. His name is Hank. I've heard he's very special. I've heard he's very strong. Hank puffed into the docks. Hank was very special. He had red wheels and a bright red cowcatcher, and he was very tall. The engines had never seen an engine like Hank before. Hank looks as strong as a giant. I'm sure he isn't stronger than a Sodor engine. Now, Thomas, I have 3 jobs for you. First, you must take new machines from the docks to the factory. Then you are to pick up stone from the quarry and deliver it to the shunting yard. And lastly, you must pick up an old tractor from Farmer McCall's and take it to the repair yard. Yes, sir. And you must take Hank with you. Hank must see the important sights of Sodor. Be back by tea time for Hank's welcome party at Knapford. Thomas buffered up to the machine trucks. Hank chuffed alongside. Hello. Howdy, Thomas. Now you look like one of the finest little engines I've ever seen. Thomas didn't like being called little. I'm a tank engine. Thomas thought Hank was being cheeky. Those trucks are way too heavy for you. Let me take them for you. Hank meant to be helpful, but it made Thomas cross. No, thank you. I'm strong enough to pull much heavier loads than this. I'd be happy to help. But Thomas was already puffing out of the docks. At the signal, Thomas didn't take the track to the factory. He chuffed straight to the quarry. Thomas pulled ahead. I may not be grand and I may not be long, but I will show Hank that I'm stronger than strong, he huffed to himself. Thomas and Hank puffed into the quarry. Now I'm going to pick up the stone trucks. Hank was surprised. Hold your huffing there, Thomas. Let big old Hank take those trucks for you. No, thank you. Tank engines can pull very heavy loads. So Thomas heaved and huffed out of the quarry. Thomas wheezed and wheeshed. Handsome Hank gleamed and glowed by his side. Children waved from bridges. Hello, Thomas. Howdy, good to see you. Hey, Thomas, aren't you gonna whistle hello? Thomas hadn't the puff to whistle hello. Hank had plenty of puff. This made Thomas feel even crosser. Thomas pulled up to the halt. He was nearly out of puff. Hello, Farmer McCall. This is Hank. He's the new engine on Sodor. Howdy, Farmer McCall. That's a mighty fine tractor you have. Say, Thomas, you look all out of puff and pull. I'll take it for you. No, thank you. And the tractor was coupled up to the end of Thomas's trucks. Thomas huffed and he puffed. His wheels spun and spun. Come on, Thomas. The train is too heavy for you. Take the pressure off your pistons. Couple me up. But Thomas was determined to pull the train on his own. We must not be late for your party. Wheel turn by wheel turn, Thomas puffed away. Thomas and Hank arrived at Marron Station. Visitors waved at Thomas. Thomas wanted to whistle back, but he hadn't any spare steam. Howdy, everybody. Thomas is overloaded right now. I'll whistle for him. Hank had lots of steam, and Hank blew the longest and loudest whistle. Then there was trouble. Thomas had cracked a cylinder. The train was much too heavy. Oh no! Now the deliveries won't be made. You won't be back in time for your welcome party. And I'm not a really useful engine. Or even a really strong one. Shucks, Thomas. I'm so sorry. That's too bad. I wanted to show you I wasn't just a fine little steam engine. I wanted to show you I was really strong. So, I didn't want to ask for your help. But I do now. Please, Hank. I'd be happy to help. You give the orders, I'll do the pushing. Hank and Thomas dropped off Farmer McColl's tractor. The workmen were very sorry to see Thomas had broken down. Next, Hank and Thomas chuffed into the shunting yards. The yard manager was waiting. The stone trucks were uncoupled. I hope you're back on track soon, Thomas. Finally, Thomas and Hank delivered the new machines to the factory. Thank you, Thomas. Hank pushed Thomas back to Knapford Station. They arrived just in time for the party. Thank you, Hank. Now all of Sodor knows what a strong engine you are. Hank smiled. And I know something too. You're the engine. Everyone cheers for on Sodor. That's something to be proud of. Thomas smiled. Hank was very special. He was a very special new friend. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Thomas and the Billboard. Knapford is the biggest station on the island of Sodor. All the engines love its bustling busyness. Today was a very special day. It was Knapford Station's birthday and there was going to be a grand party. All the engines were very excited. They were to have their photograph taken. The photograph was going to be put up on a billboard. Thomas felt very proud. I've never been on a billboard before. But the photographer was having trouble fitting all the engines into the photograph. Move back a bit there, James. And you forward, Percy. Yes, that's good, that's good. Now, Diesel, can you move in? Diesel moved in. The camera flashed. Thomas didn't know that Diesel had rolled right in front of him. And neither did Diesel. Later that day, Thomas puffed into Marron Station to pick up the new billboard. He was very excited. But when Thomas saw it, he was very disappointed. Diesel's right in front of me, Thomas thought sadly. No one can see me at all. Thomas puffed towards Knapford. Diesel moved in front of me on purpose, huffed Thomas to himself. Thomas felt cross. He wasn't looking where he was going. Then there was trouble. There was a cow on the line. Thomas turned quickly into a siding just in time. He hit the buffers and the billboard flew into the lake. Thomas went to tell the photographer what had happened. Don't worry, I'll take another photograph. Tell all the engines to meet me at Tidmouth Sheds. Thomas was about to set off. Then he saw Diesel. Thomas knew he should tell Diesel about the new photograph, but Thomas was worried. What if Diesel spoils this one too, thought Thomas. So Thomas didn't tell Diesel. Soon all the engines except Diesel were back at Tidmouth. Gordon was cross. Mr. Giggles, the famous clown, is coming to the party tonight. I must collect him from the airport. I must not be late. And I have to pick up the brass band from Brendam Docks. And I have to collect the bunting and decorations from Wellsworth. OK, I'll fetch the photographer right away. Thomas was steaming to Marron. Then he saw Diesel. Diesel was puffing straight to Tidmouth. Thomas was worried. Now Diesel would find out about the new photograph. So Thomas turned onto a branch line and he raced back to Tidmouth. There's been a mistake. You'll all have to come back later. The engines were very cross. Soon they had all gone, and Diesel trundled straight by. Later, Thomas had gathered the engines again. Then Thomas went to Marron to collect the photographer. Just as the photographer was climbing on board, Thomas saw Diesel. Now Diesel would see the photographer, and he would find out about the new photograph. So Thomas wheeshed lots of steam. It billowed from his boiler and filled the whole station. So Diesel didn't see the photographer, and he trundled straight by. The steam has made my camera wet. I'm sorry, sir. We'll have to wait for it to dry. Tell the engines to come back later to Tidmouth. So all the engines came back later, instead of doing their jobs. At last the photographer was ready. No one had noticed Diesel wasn't there. Thomas was very relieved. But just then, Diesel oiled round the bend. Diesel was surprised to see all the engines. He screeched to a halt. Rolls of bunting went everywhere. No one told me there was another photograph. But I asked Thomas to tell everyone. All the engines looked at Thomas. Thomas felt terrible. The fat controller was very cross. Gordon, you were meant to pick up Mr. Giggles, the famous clown. Emily, you were meant to pick up the brass band. And James, you were meant to pick up the bunting and decorations. None of you arrived, so Diesel had to do all your jobs. And now he is late to do his own work. Thomas was very upset. It's all my fault, sir. I didn't want Diesel to know about the new photograph. In the last one, he moved right in front of me, on purpose. I did not. The photographer told me to move. I did. Perhaps you rolled too far. Thomas knew then he'd made a mistake. I'm sorry, Diesel. I was wrong to think you did it on purpose. And I'm very sorry for causing all this trouble, sir. Soon, all the engines were lined up. The new photograph was taken. Sir, if I do all Diesel's jobs, can he collect the new billboard? That's a wonderful idea, Thomas. Diesel agreed. For the rest of the day, Thomas worked hard. He did all Diesel's jobs. And Diesel picked up the new billboard, just in time for the celebrations. It was a wonderful party. There were clowns and a brass band. Diesel and Thomas agreed that the new billboard was the best billboard they'd ever seen. Duncan and the hot air balloon. It was a beautiful day in the hills of Sodor. It was also the Thin Controller's twins' birthday. Every year, Duncan gave the twins a special birthday ride. Duncan was excited. At the depot, Duncan was getting ready. He had to look his best. His special birthday flag had been fixed to his cab. Duncan was very proud of his flag. Mr. Percival came to see Duncan. "Shall I pick up the twins now?" "No, Duncan. This year I'm giving them a ride in a hot air balloon for their birthday." Duncan was disappointed. He wanted to give the twins their birthday treat. "Duncan, you must collect a hot air balloon from the transfer yards." "Yes, sir." And he chuffed sadly away. Duncan pulled into the transfer yards. Thomas had brought the balloon from the docks. The balloon man was filling it with hot air. "Hello, Duncan." "Hello, Thomas." "That's a wonderful balloon." "You be sure to puff slowly and carefully." So Duncan huffed slowly away to Mr. Percival's house. On his way, Duncan rolled over a bumpy track. His flatbed clanked, rattled and jiggled. One of the ropes holding down the balloon came undone. "Oh dear," thought Duncan, "the bumpy track has jiggled the balloon loose. What shall I do?" Then an idea flew into Duncan's funnel. "If I jiggle the balloon more, it might float away. Then I could give the twins a ride today, and they could have a balloon ride tomorrow." So Duncan began to jiggle backwards and forwards over the bumpy track. The ropes loosened, and the balloon floated away. "Hooray!" And Duncan chuffed cheerily to the Thin Controller's house. Duncan puffed round a bend. Then he stopped. The hot air balloon had floated down. It was right in front of him on the track. Duncan bumped into the balloon. "Flatten my funnel." "Now what should I do?" The basket wobbled and one of the sandbags fell off. It made the balloon rise up a little. Duncan was puzzled. He biffed the balloon again. More sandbags fell off. The balloon rose higher and higher and floated away. Duncan was delighted. Duncan chuffed round another bend. "Bust my buffers!" There, on the bridge above him, was the balloon. "I thought the balloon had floated away. What shall I do now?" he thought. Duncan chuffed his biggest puff. The hot smoke from his funnel flew into the balloon. It made the balloon get bigger. This gave Duncan an idea. He huffed and puffed and puffed and huffed. The balloon got bigger and bigger and floated away. Duncan was delighted. He raced to the Thin Controller's house. The Thin Controller was waiting for him. "Where's the hot air balloon, Duncan?" "It came loose, sir, and floated away." The Thin Controller was upset. Then there was trouble. The balloon floated down from the sky once again, straight towards the weather vane on the Thin Controller's roof. It burst on the sharp point. The balloon tumbled down. Fizzling fireboxes. Duncan was upset. Now the twins wouldn't have their balloon ride at all. "It's all my fault, sir. I just wanted to give the twins their birthday treat, just as I always have." The Thin Controller was cross. "Duncan, You were going to give the twins their birthday ride. You were going to pick them up and bring them here. Duncan felt even more upset. He wanted the twins to have a happy day. Sir, Peter Sam could pick up the twins. Then I will go and collect the balloon repairman. I'm sure he could fix the balloon. The thin controller thought this was a very good idea. So Duncan puffed quickly away. Duncan raced into Mountain Village Station. The balloon repairman was waiting. We must be quick, sir. The balloon has to be fixed before the twins get home. Duncan chuffed quickly back to the thin controller's house. The thin controller was very pleased to see them. The balloon repairman looked at the hole in the balloon. Oh dear, it's a very big hole. I don't have enough material to fix it. I know, sir. My birthday flag, it might just be big enough. The balloon repairman looked at Duncan's flag. Well, yes, Duncan. That would be perfect. The balloon repairman fixed the balloon just in time. Peter Sam arrived with the twins. They were delighted. Soon, Mr. Percival and the twins were floating high above the Island of Sodor. And Duncan felt so happy, he thought his boiler would burst. The party surprise. In the hills of Sodor, it was time for the Thin Controller's winter holiday party. The party was held at his house. All the children looked forward to it. Mr. Percival and his family lived near the engine depot, so all the narrow gauge engines could enjoy the party too. It was the day of the party and Freddie was working with Colin the crane. They were very good friends. Freddie was excited. This party will be the biggest party ever. Then Mr. Percival arrived. All this cargo must be loaded before the party. Yes, sir, you can rely on us. I must visit Mountain Village Station. I will be back in time for Freddie to take me to the party. Yes, sir. Freddie told Colin all about the party. There'll be decorations, presents, and a big tree covered in lights. Freddie was excited. Colin wasn't. I've never been to a party. Colin was fixed in one place. He couldn't move from the siding. We never have parties at the wharf. Then Freddie had an idea. Maybe this year they could have the party at the wharf. It would be a surprise party for Colin, he thought cheerily. Freddie had to find Mr. Percival. He wanted to ask him if they could have the party at the wharf. I have to go and collect another flatbed. And Freddie raced away. Freddie saw Mr. Percival cycling away. Then he saw Peter Sam. Peter Sam was pulling flatbeds full of presents and coloured lights. They must be for the party, Freddie huffed to himself. I have to stop Peter Sam taking them to Mr. Percival's house. So Freddie didn't chuff after Mr. Percival. He raced after Peter Sam instead. Peter Sam, stop, stop! The party is now at the wharf. Peter Sam was surprised. It will be a surprise party for Colin. I'll take your flatbeds. Will you tell the other engines? All right, Freddie. And Peter Sam raced away. Freddie shunted the flatbeds to Colin. Leave these flatbeds until I come back. Colin was puzzled, but he still had lots to do, so he carried on working. Now I must find Mr. Percival, Freddie thought, and he raced away. On his way, Freddie met Rusty. There was something long and pointy on his flatbed. It's the tree for the party. The party is now at the wharf. Rusty was surprised. I'll take your tree. Will you tell the other engines? All right, Freddie. And Rusty raced quickly away. Freddie puffed and huffed to Colin. Leave this flatbed until I come back. Colin was puzzled, but he still had lots of other work to do. And Freddie raced away. It was getting late, and Freddie still hadn't asked Mr. Percival if they could have the party at the wharf. At last, Freddie puffed up to Mountain Village Station, but Mr. Percival wasn't there. Mr. Percival's already gone back to the wharf. Oh no, I must puff back as quickly as I can. At the wharf, the flatbeds were still waiting to be unloaded. Mr. Percival was cross. Please, unload these at once. Freddie had told Colin to wait for him, but Colin didn't want to get Freddie into trouble. Yes, sir. Then Mr. Percival went to look for Freddie. Soon, Freddie puffed up to Colin. I waited for you, but Mr. Percival told me to finish the job. It's all done now. He was very pleased. Freddie looked down at the canal. He wasn't pleased at all. The lights, presents and the tree were floating away on a barge. The children would soon arrive at Mr. Percival's house, and there was nothing there for the party. And there was nothing at the wharf either. Now no one will have a party, and I still haven't found Mr. Percival, Freddie huffed to himself. He felt terrible. I must stop the barge. Then Freddie saw Mr. Percival. He knew what he had to do. Freddie chuffed over to see Mr. Percival. Where have you been? Freddie told him all about his idea to have the party at the wharf. It was a surprise for Colin, sir. Colin has never been to a party. Mr. Percival thought having the party at the wharf was a very good idea. But you should have asked me first. Ah, yes, sir. If I work quickly, I can still put everything right. All right, Freddie, but hurry now. Freddie raced to catch up with the barge. He called out to the bargeman. Stop! Please turn round and go back to Colin. All right, Freddie. Freddie steamed back to Colin. He told Colin all about the party. I wanted to have a surprise party for you. For me? Colin was delighted and surprised. Soon Colin was unloading everything for the party. Now Freddie felt very happy. He steamed away to Mr. Percival's house. Freddie whistled to the children. The party is now at the wharf. Soon the children were on board, and they whooshed away. All the other engines were waiting at the wharf, even Thomas. Presents were piled high, the tree was covered in lights, and so was Colin. What a wonderful party. Thank you, Freddie. Freddie was delighted. All the engines whistled and tooted. The children cheered and cheered. It was their best winter holiday party. Henry gets it wrong. The Sodor wishing tree is a very old tree. It's older than Edward, older than Sir Handel. It's even older than the Fat Controller. Some say it's the oldest thing on the island. All the engines and children love to make wishes whenever they see the tree. Especially Henry. He thinks the wishing tree is magical. He whistles whenever he passes. One day the Fat Controller arrived with some very bad news. A summer storm struck Sodor last night. The wishing tree was hit by lightning. All the engines were upset. Henry was the most upset of all. Some special woodsmen are arriving at Brendam Docks. Henry, you must take them to the wishing tree right away. Henry knew this was an important job. They have to be back at Brendam Docks by tea time. That's when their boat leaves. Yes, sir. And Henry puffed away as fast as he could. He chuffed towards Brendam Docks. At a junction, Henry decided to take the track that passed the wishing tree. Henry arrived at the wishing tree. It wasn't standing tall anymore. Some leaves were gone and some branches were broken. Sometimes, Henry, special woodsmen have to cut trees down. Oh no! Now Henry was even more upset. Henry took the track to Brendam. His boiler bubbled and his steam sighed. But then he had to stop. Toby was blocking the line. He had snapped a piston rod. Oh dear, I can't get to Brendam if the track is blocked. Then Henry had an idea. If all the tracks were blocked, no one would be able to get to the tree, he thought. Then no one would be able to cut the tree down. I'll take your trucks for you, Toby. He buffered up to Toby's trucks. Toby's driver coupled Henry to the trucks. Henry pumped his pistons and chuffed back down the track to the wishing tree. Then Henry saw Thomas at a signal. He had a long line of empty trucks to take to the quarry. I'll take your trucks for you, Thomas. Thomas happily agreed. So Henry reversed onto Thomas's track, and he slowly wheeshed away. Then Henry saw Percy at a water tower. Percy had to take truckloads of empty milk churns to the farm. Percy, I'll take your trucks for you. Thank you, Henry. Percy shunted his trucks onto the main line. Henry buffered up to Percy's trucks and whooshed away. Then Henry saw Emily. She had empty trucks to take to the coaling plant. I'll take your trucks for you, Emily. Thank you, Henry. So Emily shunted her train onto the main line. And Henry coupled up. He chuffed happily away. Henry had the longest line of trucks a big engine could pull. At last, Henry puffed to the Wishing Tree Junction. He left Emily and Percy's trucks on one track. Then he shunted Thomas's trucks onto another. Finally, he shunted Toby's trucks onto the express line. All the lines to the Wishing Tree were blocked. Now nobody can get through. The Wishing Tree will be safe. At Brendam Docks, the special woodsmen were waiting. Henry hadn't arrived, so the docks manager asked Salty to take the woodsman.
Aye, yes, sir.
Salty tried to get to the Wishing Tree, but all the tracks were blocked with trucks. Henry was still feeling very happy. Then he heard Harold hovering over him. Henry, old chap, the special woodsmen can't get through to the Wishing Tree. They're the only ones that can help. Without them, the tree will have to be cut down. Oh dear, the woodsmen are here to save the Wishing Tree, not cut it down. I have made a very big mistake. Henry felt terrible. Now I must put everything right as fast as I can. And he chuffed quickly away. First, Henry took Toby's trucks to the depot. Then he took Thomas's trucks to the quarry. Next, he took Emily's trucks to the coaling plant. Finally, he took Percy's trucks of empty milk churns to the farm. At last, all the tracks were clear. Henry collected the special woodsman. Thank you, Salty. Then he wheeshed quickly away. Soon, Henry chuffed up to the wishing tree. The woodsmen were ready to start their very special work. They cleared and propped. They clipped and chopped. And Henry helped too. Soon the wishing tree was standing tall again. The wishing tree was saved. I wish the wishing tree would last forever and ever. The special woodsman cheered, and Henry smiled his biggest smile ever. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Best friends. Thomas and Percy are best friends. They tell each other everything. They even have a best friend's whistle. It was a busy day at the quarry. Thomas and Percy were working together. Together, Thomas and Percy happily tooted their best friend's whistle. My favourite days are when we work together. Then Neville arrived to collect some trucks. He was excited. The brass band has arrived at Brendam Docks. Hooray! I like the brass band. So do I, but I'm never asked to pull them. If you go to the washdown now, you'll soon be as shiny as a trumpet. Then maybe the Fat Controller will ask you to collect them. Percy was excited. Thank you, Thomas. The two engines tooted their best friend's whistle, and Percy puffed happily away. Later, the Fat Controller had arrived. He was in a hurry. Thomas, you are to pick up the brass band from the docks, and don't forget to have a washdown. Thomas was worried. He knew Percy wanted to pick up the brass band, but he didn't know how to tell Percy that the Fat Controller had asked him to do it. Then Thomas saw Percy puffing back to the quarry. Look at me, Thomas. I'm as shiny as a trumpet. Thomas didn't know what to say. He didn't want to upset his best friend. The Fat Controller's sure to choose me now. This made Thomas feel even worse. He puffed quickly away. Where you going, Thomas? I have another job. Percy tooted his best friend's whistle, but Thomas couldn't toot back. Thomas was enjoying his washdown. Then he saw Percy in the distance. Thomas still didn't know how to tell Percy about the special, so he hid. Percy puffed past. He didn't see Thomas. Thomas was relieved. He chuffed out of the shed. He raced away to collect Annie and Clarabelle. Then Thomas saw Percy again. I still don't know how to tell Percy about the brass band, thought Thomas. So he took a different track to the docks. Thomas knew it would take him longer. I must hurry. I don't want to be late, he thought to himself. Later, Thomas was steaming along. Cinders and ashes. There's Percy again. He was sure Percy was going to see him this time, so Thomas hid behind Duck. Percy puffed past. He didn't see Thomas hiding behind Duck's long line of trucks. Thank you, Duck. Duck looked puzzled. Thomas steamed onto the docks as fast as his pistons would pump. Thomas was late for the brass band. They were waiting on the dockside. All aboard. Then he saw some mail trucks. He knew Percy would soon come to collect them. Hurry up! The band hurried, but the trumpet player had left his trumpet behind, right at the end of the dockside. So Thomas had to wait. Just then, Percy arrived. Hello, Thomas. Percy saw that Thomas was collecting the brass band. He was very upset. Why didn't you tell me, Thomas? I tell you everything. Thomas felt terrible. He tooted his best friend's whistle, but Percy didn't whistle back. Thomas felt worse than ever. He puffed out of the docks with the brass band. Thomas arrived at Great Waterton. The Fat Controller was waiting to welcome the brass band. Thomas still felt very unhappy. He had let his best friend down. Thomas, you must come back at the end of the concert to pick up the brass band. Then an idea flew into Thomas's funnel. Sir, can Percy pick up the band? Percy is delivering the mail. If I pull Percy's mail trucks, then could he pick up the band? The Fat Controller agreed. So Annie and Clarabelle were uncoupled, and Thomas steamed off to find his best friend. Now Thomas really wanted to find Percy, but Percy was nowhere to be found. Thomas was worried. The concert would finish soon, and the band would be waiting. Then Thomas saw Percy. He was waiting at a signal. I'm sorry I didn't tell you I was picking up the band. I'm busy. I have to pull the mail. I've something to tell you. I'll pull the mail for you. Then you can go and pick up the brass band and take them to the docks. Percy beamed from buffer to buffer. Thank you, Thomas. He was very excited. Thomas buffered up to Percy's mail trucks and quickly pulled away. He was pleased to help his best friend. Percy steamed off to pick up Annie and Clarabelle. He couldn't wait to collect the brass band. Later, Thomas puffed into Great Waterton. Percy was waiting for the band. You are my best friend, Percy. From now on, I will always tell you everything. And they tooted their best friend's whistle for everyone to hear.